There's a huge misconception with real estate, and I hear this a lot, and I've had people say it to me like, oh, well, it's just so easy to make money. And that is just not true at all. You have to work very hard, and I think who you surround yourself with really impacts that, and who you have train you and mentor you really impacts that.
Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today's guest just stepped off an amazing month where she led across her brokerage with transactions and total sales volume of $3.4 million. She consistently is a top producer month after month. She is not only a great real estate agent, but an amazing mom of 3 daughters under 5 years old.
Yes. 5 and under.
5 and under. Her social media pages are a must-see. We know we always talk about social media here on the show. You need to go check her social media out, full of her work and her awards. She has worked closely with our veterans and active duty military as being part of her life. Let's welcome the superstar real estate agent with Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices Florida Network Realty, Julianne Grant-Johnson.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on, and what an amazing month. And I really want to dig in because I imagine there are 99% of the real estate agents out there have never had, let alone a $2 million month. We know a lot, hitting $1 million is always recognized, but to have a $3 million month, and from what I translated, it didn't seem like you just sold a $2 million home and a couple others. You had multiple transactions there because it says something about, leading the brokerage in the number of transactions in there. So that's a lot. So let's start us off a little bit and tell us a little bit about that month.
So this past month was actually my biggest month ever in my career, but I did have 7 closings, and I also had 2 referral closings. So working with military, I do a lot of referrals. So those 2 added to it, I believe, but I did have 7 of my own, only one of which was a double closing where I had the seller and they turned around and bought a home. Right. So that is 8 different clients that I helped.
Wow.
So that was, it's a lot of work.
Was there a buildup, like some new construction stuff that you had dealt with, like say back last summer that was just now closing in last month?
There was one that started the build last year and then closed last month. The rest were all contracts from the last 60 days.
And on average, the time that you had spent with them, obviously the build was the build, so that took whatever amount of months. But were most of these people that you started working with in the last 60, 90 days?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, some of them were actually return clients. So I did have 2 clients who came back to me after the purchase of their home, either wanting to sell or buy an additional property.
But the actual movement of doing that all started in the last 60 days. So juggling, 7 transactions at the same time. In being a record month, because this is a topic we discuss a lot. Tomorrow there's a mastermind at Landmark Title talking about teams. Tell us a little bit. Or is it just you, or have you already gone to it because of your past history of production and success? Because you haven't been in the business 20 years or anything like that. Yeah. So who's helping you out? Because juggling 7 different families is tough.
So you're actually hitting me with a hard question up front. So I do have a transaction coordinator, and I will say we are not ready to formally announce anything, but if you follow me, you will see an announcement that will answer your question very soon.
So you're at that point.
I am at that point, definitely. So month over month, I have at least 2 closings, and I find that when I hit about 4, is when I'm a little stressed out more than I would like, and that 7 is hard. So I do have a transaction coordinator. I do have showing assistants. I like to be very transparent. There's no way I could be with 7 clients at one time.
Yeah.
There's just no way anyone could do that.
The reason why I put that kind of on the spot, and it's always a topic I like to discuss, is because every agent, I'm really only having the top producers on. So all of you have reached that point, or in your case, you're at that point where you're starting to add these people. And it's a crucial step in your growth as a real estate agent, because I think there's some people out there that hit that lid They can't really take on any more, don't know what to do next, or are a little nervous about handing some of their chores off to some other people because they don't think they're going to do it as good or whatever, and it holds them back.
Absolutely. I totally get that. And I had some of my own hesitations, but at the end of the day, I know that this is not the top for me.
Right.
I know that I'm just getting started. It's only been 4 years. I have very big plans for myself. And in order to achieve that, I need support.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way in home life. I have a nanny, I have a supportive husband. Why am I not doing that in work life as well?
Yeah. Yeah. For who was on the show not too long ago was telling me, I can see her face, but the domestic help was a big part of her. She had someone doing their laundry. She still makes the kids do their laundry, but the adult laundry, some of those chores, you want to come home, you want the house to be clean, you don't be stressed about that sort of this. So having that, or obviously you've got 3 daughters under 5, which is just crazy. And it's only going to get crazier, actually.
Absolutely.
Mine's 11 and 14, and it just goes from occupying them at home to driving them everywhere for all their different activities.
Yes, I'm starting to get a taste of that now that my oldest is in sports, and that's a job in itself, just driving them to soccer, cheerleading, dance, all of these things. I need someone just as a chauffeur for my kids.
Well, my wife made a good statement. I know a lot of people like soccer, but introduce them to basketball because it's inside in the air conditioning.
Oh, that's very good
Yes.
advice. Very good advice.
Yeah. I want to pause just a moment for our sponsor here, Remy Graphics. They make this, and in your gift bag that I've got there, you've got one of these in there. If I could show it up in front of my camera there, you can see Remy Graphics, but they put the show's logo on the other side. This is just one of the laser engravings stuff they do. They do a lot more, but she will do one-offs for you. So if you got a closing and you want to give them a mug, say, hey, John and Sally, welcome to Jacksonville or whatever, but you maybe etch your name on the back so they don't forget you, because they'll never throw it away because it's got their name on it, right?
Absolutely.
But she'll make one off, so you don't have to think you got to order 20 of these. Remy Graphics, and if you mention the show, you'll get a 10% discount. But she does a lot of other, you go to remygraphics.com, which I got flashing across the screen there. They do have other merchandise, I should say. All right, back into it. So I mentioned, I'm glad you sent over your bio, because I was digging in there. The LinkedIn I couldn't find.
I think my LinkedIn actually has my maiden name from when I was applying for jobs in college before I knew I was going to be a realtor. I have LinkedIn and YouTube on my goals list for this year on where to grow.
I've been wanting to I've got a couple other people that are in the videography and stuff like that, because LinkedIn is making moves. They do want more video on there. We cut some good reels from here. If you go on my LinkedIn, you'll see where I've taken reels from other shows where they're making statements, whether it's about the NAR settlement or something that's more business related. And you can have the ChatGPT write a quick LinkedIn article about the subject that's there, if you don't want to write it one yourself. But I think that's an area when people are Googling,
right,
or when I want to find out about somebody, hey, that's the first place I go for any guests that's on the show, is I go to LinkedIn.
Okay.
Because it gives it,
know.
yeah, it's a good resume, and I can start off, because it usually will tell you on there. Some people tell you where we went to high school, at least starts at college, right? So you kind of get a little background there. But no, that's great. And then YouTube, I think, is the untapped area as well. Again, 207 shows. I've been on most people's YouTube that have been on the show. There's only less than 2 or 3 that actually have regularly updated YouTube. Right. And you guys are video, shooting videos of all these houses. They should all be filed on YouTube. Right. That's my rant for today. All right. So Pensacola is where you grew up.
Yes.
Tell us about that. You mentioned your mom was in real estate. What was your dad in the military? What brought you to Pensacola?
So my dad was actually a lawyer in Pensacola, and it was my grandmother who was in real estate. My mom stayed home with me after a marketing career. Mm-hmm. So I grew up there, not a military family at all, exposed to it because of where we lived, but not a military family. And then ultimately I did meet my husband there, who is military. And
so you met him before you went to the academy, or
after?
Okay.
So he was in flight school. The flight schools in
Pensacola. Of course.
Yes. So that is how we met. We had both just graduated from college. We met and got married and started a family pretty quick. And that was a big turning point in my life of I just worked super hard for this finance degree, but now I'm a military spouse who has to move around. What am I going to do? And my dad sat me down and he said, my mom was a realtor.
Right.
And you're going to be a realtor. I was like, I never thought about that. I don't want to do sales. I don't like sales. He was like, you have a finance degree. You'll be fine. I got my license. I fell in love. I sold one house in the first, I think, 3 or 4 months and absolutely fell in love with the job. And it's been amazing ever since.
Well, it is sales for sure. But, I think about the people that sit in the models and stuff, right? It comes in, it's great. That's easy because everything's brand new, right? And shiny. Where real estate, it is what it is.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's not like you're going to convince someone to buy this 3-year-old car that may have some issues and we don't know who was driving it or how they were driving it or whether it was, of course, in the old days, whether it was an accident or not. Now you kind of figure that stuff out. But in real estate, it's a little different sale from the standpoint of you just listening to what the client needs.
Right.
And then offering them some suggestion.
Right. I feel like I'm selling my service. I am not selling a house. I mean, sure, that's what's on paper and what's on MLS, whatever, but I am selling my expertise and my service of helping you through the transaction.
Right.
I have no allegiance to the homes. I mean, sure, on my listings, can I market it? Can I sell it? That would be kind of like the salesy aspect of it. But at the end of the day, I'm still selling the seller my expertise and my ability to do that. It's not really the home.
From the listing side, it's the marketing. I mean, I'm going to, I think, anyone's been in, which you've been in the 2020, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Is when you say. So you kind of started in a time where everything was going crazy and you could stick a sign in the yard, didn't really have to, do too much great marketing in the sense of what, if you watch like Krista Mashore or something, what she said, showing, hey, I'm going to put your house out here on social media. Look what I did for this house. This house had 10,000 views. People were clicking on it, wanted to see it, and that sort of thing, which is, I think we're getting kind of back to that, or have been.
Absolutely. I offer that to all of my sellers. I do a total social media package. I can't imagine just going and putting a sign up. I never did that, even in the crazy market. So if I list your home, I'm doing all the social media videos. I'm doing postcards, print, digital, everything. That's why you hire me.
Well, so let's dig into that a little bit since we're on that subject, because I think this is a differentiator between the great real estate agents and someone who may be just treading water. And treading water, they may still be doing very good.
Right.
But they're cutting themselves short on their potential by spending a little bit of the money, your commission there, that part of that money is supposed to be spent on marketing materials and so forth. So what are some of the things that you're doing, like that you would do on a regular basis? And I know different homes, you're going to tweak it a little bit, but what are some of the concrete foundational stuff that you do with each home, each listing? You're saying, we're definitely doing this type of thing with each home that you list.
So one thing that I do that I might be a little bit controlling about is I'm going to soft stage every single house. I don't do a lot of total staging, one, because it's extremely expensive and that's not necessarily my target market, but I am going to soft stage it. Once I hired a soft staging company and they did a terrible job, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. So now I have a closet at home and it's my staging closet and I do all of my listings myself, set them up for the pictures with, place settings, the wine glasses, the little things that make the home have the pretty tiny details for pictures. Then I'm also going to pay to have a videographer come in, which is expensive to have the right videographer.
Yeah.
We're going to do reels. We're going to do the YouTube style videos. We're going to do the Zillow walkthrough videos. So we're going to do the total package. That way, no matter how long we end up on the market, which the goal is always to sell quickly, but if we end up on the market longer, we want to make sure that we have the content to keep us viable on the market.
If you had a, and I don't know how when you do the videographer or the stuff for Zillow, it automatically does this or not, I don't know. But if you had a choice between the 3D tour versus a full video, which way would you go?
Full video.
Yeah.
I personally don't like as a consumer, when I go look at listings, late night dreaming about what I can't afford. Mm-hmm. The 3D tours are kind of difficult to navigate, in my opinion. I still do them. That way the option is there, but I would go full video.
Right. And when I imagine you've used the same videographer over and over again, so you start to get a feel of what you're looking, he or she gets the feel for what you're looking to put out there. What are some of the things that you want that video to express? How are you presenting it? What do you want it, what do you want it to say, non-verbally through the video?
I want you to be able to see yourself in the home. And it's the same thing for a showing. I want it to be short enough where I'm not going to lose someone's attention, mm-hmm. but I also want it to be realistic. So something really important to me when listing homes with photo and video is for them to be good enough to get someone to schedule a showing, but not so perfect that the client is disappointed when they walk in the door.
Interesting. How do you do that?
It's tough. It's a balance. It's
yeah.
You have to be realistic. Is it an occupied listing? Let's make sure that it's known that it's an occupied listing. Is it a flip? So it's perfectly staged. Then it's going to show that way, and it's fine to capture it that mm-hmm. way. But I think it's important to maintain the realism in this business.
Right. I always want to quote George Guerrero from Miami, and he's this great RESF Realty down there, because when I interviewed him, he was at RE Bar Camp. Video. And when you're doing it, do you feel, because I didn't get a chance to go on your YouTube actually, so I didn't get a chance to see your videos. Do you like being in some of it? Because you're saying you want that viewer to put themselves in there. So do you put yourself or put other people sometimes in certain situations in the house to give them a feel of seeing themselves there?
I'm in all of my videos.
Okay.
I find, and this is more of a realtor standpoint, but I have way higher engagement if I'm in the video and I'm talking about it. And you see me walking through the house. You see me reaching up and opening the cabinets, opening the refrigerator, going outside, those right. things. So I am always in the video.
I'm a fan already. I've got to go in and see it, because I think one of the biggest malpractices that agents can do is not putting themselves in the video.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
I think, having the Gallup group on last week who have a media background, and they were talking about, and this is so true, they're not the only ones that said it, is people are already starting to build a relationship with you because they're already, looking how you speak, how you present yourself, your mannerisms, just like if they were there one-on-one live with you, they're getting that through the video.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to have your face available. I mean, this is me. I'm the brand, right? You're coming to work with me. You want to see me. You want to get to know me. And I think that's really important.
Because, imagine if, this is your mindset on presentation, the video and so forth. How many of your videos, obviously if they're on YouTube, it's there. It's a library.
Right.
Someone searches you, it comes up. Someone searches that street. And doesn't necessarily have to be that house number, but they search that street and looking home, your video is likely to pop up one way, shape, or form or another. And how many times have you gotten calls from videos that might be months, year old, from someone who just came across it because they were searching a certain subdivision? Maybe it was the exact street, but your video popped up.
So this actually happened recently to me, where it was 3 of my closings last month were all walking distance from each other. 2 of them were listings, and they had very similar videos. And I really do think that that's why they said she knows this community. It was Rivertown. Mm-hmm. She obviously has content of the amenities, and I can speak about them really, really well.
Right.
And I listed both the homes. I sold them both in about 2 weeks, and it was awesome.
No, I was just actually thinking, when I was waiting for you to come up the elevator, I was thinking about, it would be good to put a group, because there's a couple other agents that I regularly see on social media, that are in video. But what you're talking about is exactly what I've been trying to preach in, hearing from greats like George Guerrero down in Miami with, now has a brokerage of nearly 500 agents, that he's built in the last, not even 20 years. His whole thing was he wanted to make a movie for every house, basically was his mindset. And the realization, and he didn't even have YouTube at the time, back in 2006 and 7 and that sort of thing. Now you have YouTube. Anyone that was searching those houses, I guarantee the videos of every one of those houses, and of course they're all active at the same time, right? So it was great. Those videos were all popping up of you and making you look like you own the place.
Right.
You own that subdivision. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The credibility.
Absolutely.
That you immediately gain credibility by having and being in the video.
Yes.
Yeah. 100%. Go back to University of Florida, step back a little bit, not too far for you, but finance degree.
Yes.
So I'm really curious because I do not have a finance degree, but I'm obviously in mortgages. As your finance degree, to be able to speak somewhat of the language and what's involved in the loan. I don't know if you learned it from there or learned it from the lenders here where we, share information with you to, educate the agents so they can at least speak somewhat intelligent to a client, at least lead them towards the application link. But how did your degree help you a little bit in your confidence in speaking to customers?
So I wouldn't say that I learned anything at the University of Florida that benefits my business. But I would say that having
other than your networking.
Other than networking skills, that's a good one. So I would say that having a finance degree gives me credibility, so builds on that. Mm-hmm. A lot of my clients like to know that I studied finance. But for me, the finance degree, I was a huge math nerd growing up, like captain of the math team in high school. Mm-hmm. Super, super nerdy. Got the finance degree, thought about going into wealth management. So that's personal interest for me. So being able to talk more on like return on investment, rentability, what you can do to your home to see that return on investment, different percentages, things like that have really helped me with my clients. I do take all of like the VA loan classes and I try to speak as well as I can. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I do try to stay in my lane. And that is not my lane.
I imagine they covered stuff like trends and so forth. So when you're going in, whether buying or selling, this has been the trend in the region. This has been the trend in the state, the neighborhood, to be able to speak more fluently.
Absolutely.
When describing, especially that return on investment right now. A question that just popped into my head that I like to ask occasionally when it's right. If you've got an investment buyer right now in today's market with the interest rates where they're at right now, and they're looking at an investment property that it's probably a break even. Their rent's going to cover their expenses. They're not going to be losing any money. But knowing what you know about real estate long term, would you still suggest them to buy a house that they're not losing any money on a monthly basis?
So I always think there are follow-up questions to that. But at the end of the day, yes, breaking even is still a good investment. Sometimes if you're financing the home, I think that you can kind of look at the house as a bank. You're monthly depositing money into it and building equity. So yes, but I also think there are follow-up questions. Can you personally benefit from this? Are you going to vacation there? Can your family member use it as an Airbnb? Mm-hmm. There are so many other factors aside from just the return on investment, financial speaking, for investors. So we actually just thought about listing our first rental property, and it was probably going to be a break-even situation. But we were like, it's still going to allow us to build our portfolio. Let's do it. It's going to appreciate over time anyways. Right. And we're going to be able to change the rent or sell it higher later. So I still think it's a good investment.
Right. I agree with you. I think, unfortunately, too many people want to get in. They think they're going to live off that cash flow. Oh. No, you should. I don't think they should be going into investment properties thinking that.
That's not very.
No,
not
because by the time you got to do repairs and all that stuff. So if you are making $300 or $400 a month, $500 a month, yeah, trust me, over the course of the year, you're going to have to fix something, that other thing. It's really, you'll get some tax deduction, abilities there, but you've really got to be looking at it long term, unless of course you're flipping a house. You're definitely buying it below market. And
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And so my dad, I told you he was an attorney. He's actually a bankruptcy attorney. So he raised me to be very low risk and things like this. So the fact that I even take the occasional risk on real estate and give advice like that, he would not be super thrilled. But I do think at the end of the day, it's a good investment. The market's cyclical, and Jacksonville specifically, you're going to see a return. Well,
a lot of people did lose their tail back in 6, 7, and 8.
Yep.
And but if you held on to that house, that investment property that maybe you bought in 2006, if the rent was always covering it, that house is worth so much more today.
Right.
And what you could sell it for, and obviously the return on investment if you held on to it that long. Yep. I think a lot of people are trying to think. Well, I would say a lot of people. I mean, there's a good bunch of people who want to get in, but they're trying to make some sort of quick turnaround.
Yes.
And I think right now, the housing value is going to be stagnant, my personal opinion. Because even if rates drop, the demand go up. But someone Bruce Breedlove made a great statement. He believes, and I have to agree with him, there's a lot of sellers right now that are really wanting to sell, but they're not in a position, because they're going, well, I got this really low interest rate, so I really want to move, but I'm going to suck it up right now and stay here until it becomes a little more comfortable. When the rates drop to a more comfortability, they will make that move. So where we have demand for buyers, we also have somewhat of a demand over here that people want to sell.
I agree with that completely. I think, me personally, I was in one of those situations. We bought our first home in May of 2020, 3% interest rate. Mm-hmm. We were like, wow, are we done for selling this house? But we had to. Our family grew significantly. Now we have a nanny who lives with us. We needed a bigger house. But I hear that from a lot of sellers. They're like, I'm sitting on a 3% interest rate. Yeah. I'm not letting it go. But eventually life happens, right? And they're going to have to let that go.
Well, we all come to that, whether life happens because you have to move in the military. We'll talk about that here in a little bit and your experience there. Or, the commutes changed. Maybe they changed jobs locally, but now the commute's another 15 minutes. Or, we were seeing a lot, I'm sure you experienced this in 2021 or 2020, 2021, where we have people that just move here within the region. Maybe they're out of Nocatee, or they're not in Nocatee. They want to move to Nocatee, but they live on 210 anyway, and it's only 5 miles over there. But they're friends over there, so they want to live out there, or vice versa. They've moved into Nocatee, thinking it was going to be all this glorious thing, and it wasn't what it was cracked up to be. And that's vice versa. That happens in every neighborhood. Yep. They move in and it wasn't up to expectations. But we were seeing a lot of those moves because the interest rates are so low. It's like, oh, whatever.
Easy. Done.
Yeah.
Right.
So what was it about real estate, that really got you moved? Because you can be recommended by Dad to do something, but there had to be something in there that you saw, whether it was you said your grandmother was in real estate. Mm-hmm. What was it that you saw that Julianne said, yeah, I'm going to go for that. Let me go check that out.
So to be honest, and I'm always hesitant in giving this answer because I want my clients now to know I am all in, and I'm obviously a full-time realtor.
Obviously.
But when I
the numbers speak for themselves.
Whenever I started, it was more like, I'm starting a family. I'm also a wife. Let's make money but have flexibility. And that was the idea when I started. It's super flexible, and people say that all the time about real estate, and it's a lie. I think it's a lie. You don't make your own schedule. That's not true. That was the idea when I started, and then,
maybe before noon. A lot of times before noon,
yes, you could before noon. But then once you get that first phone call of the day, you're done. The whole day's gone. So I would say that's kind of what drew me to it. And then I took the real estate course, which I actually really enjoyed. Going back to the math nerdy side of me, I loved learning the real estate law. I thought it was all very fascinating. I don't think I realized how many faucets there were. And then once I did my first transaction, I honestly love that it's a relationship business. I love working with people, and I genuinely find I just love helping people achieve home ownership and their investment goals. It's extremely rewarding.
It can be, well, it's like a lot of things, addicting, especially if you're good at it and then you're getting the response from them, right? Oh, they appreciate things that you did. It's a dopamine hit.
Oh, absolutely.
When you do it and you go out there and you'll do some things, that a lot of people don't discount real estate agents, but if you go and hear the stories of whether it was cleaning toilets and other things prepared for a showing or whatever, picking up people's stuff, that some of the things they do but we don't really talk about. But you do it because the dopamine hit that you get when someone actually goes in there and says, oh wow, this is great, I want to buy it, and you're like, man, if I didn't go in there and not that it's every house, thank God, but if I didn't go in here and do some of this stuff, but that's the reward at the end is to be appreciated. Where I'm trying to think what the ism was at Quicken Loans is where I first started. Do the right thing and the money will follow. It's in so many words, and that's really what real estate is. You've got to do the things, and if you are going the extra mile, which I imagine you have found out.
Yes,
that's probably, you didn't learn that on the test.
Absolutely.
But give me an example. I'm sure there's a story you probably share with some people sometimes. A little bit of a horror story that you had where you had to kind of put gloves on.
So this takes me back to actually one of my first closings. So we go to do the final walkthrough. Well, the second to final walkthrough. I like to do two, especially because of how this one went. And the sellers hadn't moved everything out, but it's still the night before closing. I tell the agent, I take my pictures, and I'm like, I tell the listing agent, these are the things wrong that we expect it to be done. And she's like, don't worry, it's all going to be done. I know that I still need to worry just a tiny bit. So the next morning before closing, we go to do final walkthrough. The sellers are gone, and they've left champagne bottles in the yard. Like, they throw a party. All of their furniture is there. There's rugs. There's hangers in the closet. There's dishes in the sink. And my buyers are crying. And my face, I could feel it. I'm like, I'm red. I don't know what to do. So I FaceTime the listing agent. And I'm just like, I'm going to start working on this while I'm here. But I'm going to need you to make a couple of phone calls and get a moving truck here right now. Mm-hmm. And she could see the house, and she was like, done. So I start doing dishes, right? I'm going through the cabinets, finding the cleaning supplies. Now,
were the dishes supposed to be left?
These are dirty dishes. They're dirty dishes in a sink by the seller. And I'm representing the buyers, and it's closing day.
Well, you're cleaning them for what reason?
I'm trying to clean the sink.
Oh, clean the sink.
I'm trying to clean the sink. I'm scrubbing the sink. I'm cleaning the whole kitchen. Thankfully, she gets a moving truck there. She brings her fiance, I think it was at the time. They load everything up. I take my buyers. I'm like, we're going to have some coffee. We're going to sit here for an hour, and we're all just going to relax and go back. And sure enough, they had that house empty. And that was due to only realtors. Us cleaning, taking out all the hangers. I was climbing on ladders to pull things out of the closet.
Great story. So let's get some learning lessons from it. So today, how do you, from what happened there, what do you now do especially on some of these sales where you think this might happen?
So I haven't had any, thankfully, where I have it super coming like that. Mm-hmm. But I do try and do a walkthrough 2 days before closing to get some type of update. And if for some reason sellers are packing and they don't want us to walk through, then that's fine. But I'm going to ask the listing agent, what's the status? Do
you necessarily go over with your buyers, or just you kind of go over and scout?
It depends. I'm pretty unique in that a lot of my buyers aren't here. I work with military buyers, so I actually do a lot of the transaction by myself. Mm-hmm. I do inspections alone. I do a lot of showings alone, a lot of walkthroughs by myself. So I would say something I learned there was to super micromanage everything, which isn't always the easiest task. But at the end, I want the home to be how it is, and I want closing day to have as few of surprises as possible.
Well, imagine this particular house you were just talking about. So you clean the dishes, you move out what furniture's there, but the house probably never was truly cleaned to be handed over. What do you recommend in that?
I gifted my buyers a cleaner.
Yeah.
So that was just something That I actually do that a lot now because I know that sellers, you will think that it's clean when you're leaving. You know, you did what you could, but it's not what the buyer is expecting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of just something I've learned, especially if you're selling in a newer neighborhood. So that is a big closing gift that I like to give sometimes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And having several cleaning people on your speed dial is important.
It is.
Yeah.
Having several of everybody on your speed dial is important in this business.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you know, just if people really sit down and think about when you move out that last piece of furniture, and especially if you were moving today and as hot as it is out there, you're exhausted.
You're done.
And the last thing you want to do is turn around and go back in and I'm going to get on my hands and knees and clean behind the toilet and all those type of things like that. They just don't want to do it. And to, you know, whatever, foreshadow, set expectations that, hey, when you move out, the cleaning crew needs to walk in.
Yes.
And you know, this is how you need to, you know, leave it, you know, for the, you know, and sometimes the buyers, they've got a cleaning crew ready to go in because they want it spick and span. Because the first thing they want to walk into that empty house is, to have it spick and span, but they don't want to have to do that because they know they got a pile of furniture in a truck that has to be moved in.
So I should have mentioned this. I write it into a lot of contracts depending on how the initial showing goes. Because I also believe that you can tell at a showing if it's a home that's probably going to need more than like the sweep out clean that is standard. So if
deep cleaning of the carpets, if it's got carpets and stuff like that, dog and all that, cats.
You know that there's cats, you know that there's dogs. I'm just going to put it in the contract. That way we don't have to talk about it later. It's really only like $300. And at the end of the day in a whole real estate transaction, that's not a lot of money and it's not a huge ask. And then we don't have to have a conversation about it later on.
Well, I did have a situation. I can't remember exactly who was involved, but I remember hearing it recently that there was a argument or you know about how the house was left, but it's like it isn't in the contract unless you're adding it into that area where you can add that in. It's not in the contract that the sellers have to leave it clean.
No.
And I know many of agents have cleaned out garages where they just threw all the stuff they didn't want to take with them, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I actually sent my husband recently to a listing. So my seller had the tenants move out and they left just junk all in the front yard, trash in the front yard. And I just told my husband, I was like, I have appointments all day and this is going on the market.
Go grab the boys and a case of beer.
And he did. He did all of it for me. But that is the reality of it sometimes.
Yep, 100%. Let's talk about your start.
Okay.
All right. So, again, I didn't see your LinkedIn. So have you always been with Berkshire?
Yes.
Okay. So what leads you there? Did you know someone? What led you to Berkshire Hathaway?
So I interviewed with a few different brokerages. You know, the second you pass that exam, they're all calling you, trying to get you to interview. And then it was a family friend. So my cousin's like in-laws are from Jacksonville. And we were all at Thanksgiving and they said, you know, our friend's the #1 agent in Jacksonville and you need to sit down with her and talk. I'm thinking, there's no way your friend's actually the #1 agent. You know what I mean? Like everyone's friend is the #1 agent in Jacksonville. But I did sit down with her and I was like, oh wait, I actually think you might be the #1 agent in Jacksonville. And so then she set me up with her broker. And once I met my broker, Josh, I knew that that's who I needed to mentor me and train me. To start with Berkshire Hathaway specifically, the brokers don't work with buyers and sellers, so you're not necessarily competing against them. They're truly there to support you, which was really important for me. On my first contracts, I was calling him at 8 p.m. like, where do I write the earnest money deposit? You know, what's the down payment? Wait, my buyer's not putting money down because he's VA. Where do I write that? And he was always available.
Right.
So.
Well, I need to have Josh on because I had Zachary Williams on, and I don't really often study what brokerage. I just look at the agents and what they're doing, their social media, and their top producers have them on. And so I double booked Berkshire Hathaway 2 days in a row with Zach the other day. So he was bragging about Josh as well there. So I probably should reach out to Josh and have him in sometime in July because I'm booked up for the rest of the month. I imagine as a young person, you've had a lot of people, girlfriends or whatever, ask you about being in real estate.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah. How important here, and again, Zach, same way. He never has worked with anyone else, but he had a mentor. He had a friend of his that was with the brokerage and kind of brought him in there. How important is it for someone getting in this business to really understand the role or the broker they need based on how they plan to do their business, or just how their ideology and needs are? Some are at different levels. You had some family that were in real estate, so you had an idea. Some people have no clue, and they walk in, get that license, and they literally don't have anyone to even tell them how to open the door.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So how important is it if you were guiding a friend of yours for them to, they need to go out and have some chats?
I absolutely think that you need to talk to the most people that you can to find the right fit for you. I think it's extremely important. And I think there's a huge misconception with real estate. And I hear this a lot. And I've had people say it to me like, oh, well, it's just so easy to make money. And that is just not true at all. You have to work very hard. And I think who you surround yourself with really impacts that. And who you have train you and mentor you really impacts that. I invested a lot in my training. I think that that's super important. But I also would ask, if my friend was coming to me about this, what are their goals? Do they want to be a part-time realtor? Which I don't always think is worth it. And that's my personal opinion on that. Or do they want to be a full-time realtor? Are they trying to do the sales volume that a lot of people in my office and that I do? And that, I think that I am fortunate in that I picked a very good path and mentor. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, because there's many I've had on the show that, some have, I wouldn't say blindly, but you walked in without, knowing a lot about others, and it's worked out. Others have walked in and realized it's 6 months, or 80% are out. They never renew. Right. So how long were they actually in? A few months or whatever, and they weren't getting. There's some places that are really good with new agents. There's others that cater, like Engel and Volkers. They cater more toward the more mature, experienced agent, because it's just the different things that they're doing there. Because I think you can get, without the proper resources and structure to cater to them all, is tough to do.
Absolutely.
Because obviously the new agent you think is going to drain a lot of your resources, statistically, because of their needs and needing to get ramped up.
Absolutely.
You mentioned work in that last. A lot of people don't realize you work hard. Can you make a good money? No doubt, you can make good money in real estate, but you have to be willing to, as we mentioned, some of the dirty things that you need to do. Right. I think one of the hardest things besides getting dirty is getting no. Mm-hmm. You're calling all these people, but not everybody's looking to buy or sell a home all the time. Right. You could sit there and ask your, friends, hey, I'm here. I can help you buy a house, sell a house, whatever. You might be 3 years before you get your first friend that actually says something to you. Absolutely. Because A, they're not ready, or B, they don't know if you're actually the best person yet. Right. You have to kind of prove your thing there. Where there's always that friend that would want to actually be your first house. Absolutely. Right? There's always that friend too. You got to find. I
will always remember my first clients. We are still close. They're actually now back in Pensacola, and I did that referral, and they will always have such a special place in my heart for trusting me with no reason to other than me.
Yeah, 100%. So the working hard is not physically, it's mentally as well. And how important, and I'm sure you've gone through some times. I think, I don't know if anyone's, everyone could look at your real estate career right now. Oh, it's, been all sunshine and roses for you. But statistically, we know there were some dark nights where, am I doing the right thing? Should I be in this business? Right. And how did you fight through those kind of negative times where you were questioning yourself?
Absolutely. So I have been relatively fortunate in that my business has grown year over year, but it has not grown month over month. I have had months with 0 closings, and those months are not necessarily like financially hard, but they're mentally very hard because you're still working. You're still listing the houses. You're still working with buyers. It's just you're not having the closings yet.
Which is what we're seeing now.
Right.
More of the houses are sitting on the market a little longer.
Right.
Buyers are coming in and they're questioning it. Oh, we need to wait 6 months.
Right. So during those times, it is really tough, and you question, am I doing this right? Am I making the right investments? Am I leaving my kids for the right reasons? Those are questions that I would struggle with personally, because time isn't just money for me. It's time away from my family and my children. And at the end of the day, I would always come back to, I love this job and I love this business, and markets are cyclical.
Yeah.
And it always has paid off.
Right. Well, when we live in a fortunate area, obviously, we're going to transition into the military here in a moment, but we have that aspect here. Right. And then we're fortunate to be one of those places in the country right now that is in a top 10 area to grow in. It's a very much an untouched resource in Florida. We have a lot of natural amenities here, especially if you like boating and fishing and those types of things. But our Jacksonville's become a financial hub as well. So you have professional jobs moving in, that type of thing. So we've been fortunate in obviously Florida demand, right?
Right.
We're still considered that inexpensive place. Not really that's another subject. We'll talk about housing affordability on another show. Let's transition into, because you do obviously utilize the research. Your husband's active duty.
Yes.
Right. So what are some of the things that you do to enter that market besides just him selling you?
Right.
You've now entered that market, so you got to give back a little bit to that market, right? So what do you do to nurture that?
Absolutely. So about 95% of my business is military, actually. I've only ever had, I think, 4 buyers use a conventional loan. So that's a pretty unique thing for a realtor. Things that I do, I would say my social media, I try and just keep my authenticity, and that's who I am. I'm a military spouse. I'm raising children in the military life. I'm a realtor. I share all of it. I try to share the good, the bad, the ugly, the goodbyes, the homecomings, to make it all relatable so that I'm a real person and you attract, what you're putting off. So that is who I attract on my social media, our military families. As far as nurturing it, I do sponsor different alumni association events with the Naval Academy. I speak on their podcast. I will send them content. I'm planning my very first client appreciation event, which will be mostly military. For military, we'll have an open bar. I know that's important to them. Nurturing things that way.
You always free food and drink is always going to get some.
We'll be fine. Knowing your audience and just being relatable. I took a course at our national sales convention on Instagram Reels, and it was really interesting. And the biggest takeaway I had was to have digestible content. And that's what I tried to do, is keep it real.
Digestible content. Go deeper on that. What were they saying?
So it's not fake. It's not just like this.
Authentic.
Yes. So something that you can actually consume that the consumer can relate to. Right? Something that you can take in and find value from, and not necessarily, I think there's a huge problem on social media that creates jealousy and people are envious of different people's lifestyles. And that is not the content you want to put out. You want to put out the relatable, authentic content.
Interesting. That is very, occasionally you'll see someone post something about, hey, don't be envious of others. That's a highlight reel of their life. They're just not showing you that they have stuff happen too.
Right.
And when you just said that triggered that thought, but you're right. Just by putting that out there that you're, I don't know, might be a fancy vacation or something like that, could set someone off who doesn't have the money right now,
Right.
whatever's going on in their life, and they become a little bit envious there. It happens. We're human. Versus just being kind of the neutral, authentic. That's interesting. Right. Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm all about sharing my wins and, how I celebrate and fun things with my family. But I think it's important to share that life is life and life happens.
Well, I think you have to show your wins because you want to show people out there, I'm doing business and I'm good at it.
Absolutely.
So I'm closing houses. Here's the family I just hooked up and that kind of thing. You want to put those out there.
Right.
But the car you just bought, some people have bought some cars recently and I've seen. I'm like, I know what you're doing. We all can see each other's numbers within the industry.
Right.
And, when you're showing off an exuberant vehicle because you think that's going to impress somebody to buy or sell with you, you think you're down the wrong path there. I mean, a lot of people would agree with that.
I've seen some realtors put like their cars in listing videos where they pull up in a certain car. I'm like, I don't know if that's adding value. I'm not sure if that's digestible.
There's a guy, I think he's called the Heli Realtor.
Okay.
He's in Michigan.
Okay.
And he wasn't in the military. I heard him on a podcast and I started following him. He taught him, went and learned how to fly a helicopter.
Okay.
So he has a helicopter in Michigan and he'll fly, especially some of these houses that are on some of these lakes and they got big yards and so on, and fly the helicopter in.
Okay.
And he puts on I'm trying to think of that show that talk American Riches, but it's impressive. But it's not like he's flying this fancy helicopter. Right. It's a basic helicopter that, people who are hobbyists in flying planes, a small plane, plane could buy. But he's made it part of his business. But obviously he uses it. He flies customers, especially they're going to buy this multi-million-dollar house. Let's go up in the helicopter and go fly. Who would want to do business with that guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say but it's that now he's selling the houses that fall into that category too. Right.
Know your market, know your audience, and who do you want to digest your content.
That's some solid advice though. The authenticity is a word that's being thrown around a lot in there, but relatable was the other word I think you used there. That was some solid advice there. I want to dig in because you said 95% of your business roughly is veterans and not, most of they're using their VA home loan benefit.
Yes.
Some agents just have this, being a lender, the VA loan is the greatest loan ever. It's the most forgiving. There's a lot of different, if you have good underwriters, they can get some hairy stuff done on a VA loan that other type loans, they'd be like, no, don't even talk to me about it. Why do you think agents even today, because I think we're a generation away from the agents back, when I first started in 2005 at Quicken Loans, we didn't even do FHA and VA loans.
Okay.
We had all these other type of loans that could do it. And the VA and FHA were like 3%, 4% of the actual lending going on, where today it's like 40% are getting those type of loans. Why do you think there's still agents out there that have hesitancy or just some sort of issue with a VA buyer?
So I do see this a lot representing VA buyers. So I think that it's extremely important for myself representing them to be educated on how to talk to all parties about the VA loan. But to be honest, the only reason I can think that there would still be hesitancy would be the same problem in any business, and that is the inability to grow and learn and adapt. And people get set in their ways. Yeah. And people, need to get uncomfortable and shake things up. A lot of people don't realize that sometimes, to me, the benefits of the VA loan actually would outweigh the risk. Odds are we have a better qualified person. They have a consistent income, as opposed to the person who has a lot of
Or if they do have some damages, it's a lot more forgiving.
Right.
To get approved. I mean, it's the most forgiving loan out there.
So there are, to me, a lot of benefits. And I just think it's important for me as that buyer's agent to be able to talk and have a candid conversation with the listing agent about it. But I also, on the flip side, think it's important that the seller understand there will be a WDO inspection and we will ask for those repairs. So I've had scenarios where a seller was like, oh, well, why are they asking for all that? Can we negotiate it? Nope. You got to fix it. You want to sell the house to us, you're going to fix it.
Who doesn't in Florida does not order a WDO inspection on any house?
People.
No matter what the loan. Don't order.
I've seen it when I have listings, but that's not on me to schedule the inspection. That's up to buyer and buyer's agent what inspections they want to schedule. I always order a WDO.
You're in Florida.
Right.
I mean, I had Austin Gray on, and I think I don't know what he said. There's like 16, some astronomical number of termite, I don't know, nests or whatever. I don't think the nest is the proper word, in every acre in Florida. And your houses are sitting around hundreds of them.
Right.
And you have to be ordering a WDO anyway.
Especially with the historic districts and the older homes that we have here. It's just so important to know and understand what you're buying.
From the lending side in our circles, and again, what we hear from some of these, I think what it is, there's agents that talk to some of these agents who are sitting in the board, not necessarily at the board, but down at like NEFAR or the St. Augustine board, that don't really actually have sold a lot of real estate lately, but think they know everything about real estate. And they're still telling the old wives' tales from 20 years ago, and how they don't understand how the VA loan and VA's gotten better at making these much quicker process. We were talking about assumptions before the show, but they always talk about the VA appraiser, like they're doing some special thing. And correct me, and I want to you probably just strengthen what I'm about to say. Water damage, they're looking for that, right? Because that could be costly, and not all veteran. The worst thing you do is assume a veteran doesn't have money. Because I think they go, oh, they're doing 100%, because they don't have any money. No, that's not necessarily true. Right. But the VA does look at it that way because they don't want that veteran to go in there and all of a sudden have these other costs. Right. And now their house is unlivable because now mold's growing in it. So if they see any sort of water damage. But that VA appraiser is actually a senior appraiser. He's gone through doing conventional. He's probably endorsed FHA. These are the best appraisers around to get that endorsement. It's very important to them to have that endorsement. But the VA turnaround time is better because the VA requires them to get their butt out there and get that appraisal done. Yes. So that moves things along quicker, and you know a value right away. Not getting a lot of low values right now. No one that I've seen has had a low value, but they think the VA appraiser is doing something like almost being like a VA appraiser / inspector, and they're not really
true. And I do see that, and I have heard that people kind of think that, and even the buyer when they come to me does not understand the difference between inspections and appraisal and what's negotiable and what's not negotiable. So I actually do a very detailed buyer consult. My buyer packet is 24 pages long. My military clients appreciate the detail normally, but I do a very, very detailed consult so that way you understand, and that way I'm also hoping that the listing agent can explain that to the seller.
What are some things in this 24 pages that you feel are the most beneficial, or have you gotten feedback that you're like, oh wow, what are some things you have in there?
Most beneficial, I have a diagram of the buyer process. Visual, you can see it step by step from buyer consult. Nice
schematic that they can actually, instead of a bunch of words to fill up the page.
It's like the bubble diagram style. And then at the end of it, I actually have a mortgage term sheet by definition. And I have a closing cost estimate spreadsheet with percentages, very, very specific.
One of the things I've heard over the years, especially from the older veterans, is their assumption that they are not paying the closing costs, when in reality, what they did was just, obviously bumped up the price, cut them back to concessions to pay their part of the cost. And they didn't even know that even happened. Right. Have you run across this?
I do see a lot where, the consumer hears zero down and they think that means zero money. And that is not what it means because there are still closing costs. So I actually use that phrase in all of my buyer consults, that 0% down does not mean zero money involved.
Right. Right.
So I do think that that's really important. You need to understand closing costs, but I also tell my buyers, everything is negotiable. So we can negotiate closing cost coverage.
Right.
We can do all of that. We can get you that rate buy down that you want with the right seller and the right house, the right offer and tactics. We can do whatever is needed. There's
varying opinions on, well, now to Heroes Loan is basically for everybody, the down payment assistance. And it's not really, I mean, in this market right now, I don't know where veterans really need down payment, especially down payments. It's one thing, it's a grant that they don't have to pay back.
Right.
But to go with the Hometown Heroes as a veteran, is it truly a benefit to them to have that whatever money they get, but have it still sitting there on the behind the scenes?
I have only ever had 2 clients use the program.
Yeah.
And they were very specific scenarios. It is not even a program that I bring up unless cash is really, really a problem for them.
Right. Cash, value of the home, really tight. The seller needs so much and you're kind of at a standstill there and you still need whatever amount of money to cover cost and so forth. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And speaking to different people, they really think that it was... It's great for, non-military, your first responders,
right,
teachers, that kind of thing. But for your veterans itself, it's not really, you've got this sitting on there. And then if they get transferred in a year and a half, especially right now where I think, we probably could say we're not going to see much appreciation in homes, just, because of what's going on. We could, pretty say if you sell it in 24 months, hopefully you get out what you pay for it today, maybe a little bit more, but we wouldn't predict that based on current conditions.
Right.
That if they get transferred again and have to sell it, and they had this second added on there to cover the cost, plus if they had to pay the funding fee on there, you're already upside down.
Absolutely. I have seen that happen where someone got orders that they weren't expecting. They didn't do the Hometown Heroes, but they financed the funding fee. So they hadn't made a dent in their mortgage.
I don't think have I ever had anyone pay the funding fee before?
I don't think I've ever had it.
Well, it's so rare. It's so rare now because everyone basically, especially if they're not active duty, they're getting some sort of disability, and they just 10%, and then they're out. They're out. They're all getting. It seems like they're all getting at least 10% in one way.
All of my clients are active duty, so I've only had one that was actually a veteran. So most of my clients are active duty.
I want to dig and tagging on to, you're catering to, well, you're like, your husband's active duty. You're around these people all the time. You're utilizing your sphere there. As you mentioned, you're doing a lot of sight unseen. The buyer is not there with you.
Yes.
I imagine you've gotten better at it over time.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you've learned from the very first time you did it to what, if someone called you today and I want you to go out and scout these homes. We're going to be transferred here. We're in Japan and we can't get here.
So how I present it initially to my buyers at the consult, which are typically on Zoom because they aren't here. So I know already that they're not in Jacksonville yet. I say to them, it is up to you. I can do absolutely everything by myself. It is up to you how involved you want to be and whatever your tolerance for that is. Because it could be really stressful if you're the buyer. It doesn't have to be. That's what I'm here for, is to absorb that stress. But it's totally up to you and your tolerance for it. I always recommend if you can come see the home, I'll find it, whatever, do the first showing virtual. But if you can come see it, that's always the best. But it's not always the case. So things that I do to make the client more comfortable. I'm going to videotape my drive and I'm going to talk about what I'm passing. Is there a Publix? Is there
school,
a Walmart, a school, things like that. I'm going to pull up a map and show them hot spots around each house. And I typically print off a big sheet of all the homes we're looking at if they're in a close geographical region to each other. And I take videos of me walking up and down the street. So it's not just the house, because we all know you're not just buying a house, especially are you looking at a newer community? Are you looking at a historic district? Where can you walk to? What restaurants can you walk to? Are you walking distance to the pool if you're in a big amenity community? Things like that.
Right. Because there's even people who have gone and looked at the houses oftentimes haven't taken the time to observe a lot of those things. You
Right.
assume they have, but they've driven by it. But I mean, there's, many people have moved into these CDD communities, and I will say this, but I was on my board for 11 years. I had no idea what a CDD was until I got on that board. Actually, the day I was nominated to go on the board, because the board member had moved out, it wasn't a vote, they nominated me to fill the seat. I really didn't even know how, okay. But now I can do a course on it after 11 years of being on that board and how things worked and all the things that we were doing and what they're responsible for. But that type of language is, French to many people moving in, HOA, they kind of know what that is, but still need that explained. CDD is a whole nother level of what that actually is entailing. But actually, after they learn and understand what they're getting and the amenities that it involves and why it's done that way, I do a seminar. If anyone wants me to come do a seminar, it's like I can do it in like an hour and a half. I could probably do it shorter than that. But anyway, these are things that the average, they look at the house, they see the payment, the CDDs included is in with the taxes, so they don't even realize there's that $2,000 or more, depending on the community you're in. It's there, but it's part of the taxes. They're like, okay, whatever, it's taxes I'm paying, property tax. All right, yeah, great, I can do that. But then when they move in the community, whether they like it or not is something. Then they start realizing what's going on. There's just all these sight unseen things. Right. So the point I'm making is what you're doing is very difficult.
Yes.
What's the attitude though? Because the military, a lot of these guys some guys are moving more than others, depending on, so they might only agree as, well, I'm only going to be there 2 years. I'm single, so that's easy. But if they're married and they got a kid, how close we are to the school, what's important to them is vital. But what have you seen just approximately in your head, like, or some of them like, yeah, no problem, or a lot of them like, no problem, you can do it sight unseen, because I'm in Japan, I'm in Okinawa, I'm in, wherever they're at in the world, and they just aren't going to get here. But they want a house.
Most of them don't mind. Majority of them have accepted that is the situation that they're in. And a lot of my business is word of mouth. So their friend has already done it with me sight unseen.
And you've got the credibility already that you are showing them the behind the scenes as much as reasonable possible. Right. I know some people agents are a little nervous because of the
fair housing laws.
Yes, the fair housing laws.
So I'm always...
Are they really fair? I don't know, but it's fair housing laws. Yeah. How do you what are some of the things you don't show? What is that when you're putting one of these videos together?
So I actually always bring up the fair housing laws when talking about sight unseen because, I can't steer you. I can't do things like that. I can videotape all I want. I actually had someone call the HOA in my own neighborhood that I was out there videotaping the street. And I was like, I'm a realtor. I'm just trying to showcase our neighborhood. I'm sorry. I'm not doing.
They had to call Josh Rogers. He's out there all the time.
So I can show you as much as I can, but you're right. I can't say certain things. And
verbalize it
on the consumer to do their own research,
right? Or
reach out to their friend.
So do you have like a GoPro you attached on your car when you go for a drive, so you can say, "Here, we're going to drive from the house to the base"?
Yep. I just do it with my phone. I put my phone up. A lot of times when I do sight unseen, I actually will take my husband or another realtor with me for safety reasons. Right. Don't love walking through vacant properties by myself. It's as a female. So I tend to take my husband and he'll drive and I'll videotape and we'll both talk.
Cool. Now, I've heard that before, and I think that is, you obviously have the trust and credibility that you've built up over the last years and the clients endorsing you. That has huge value. If you were to lose that credibility, it would really, hurt, but you keep adding to it. You mentioned something a few minutes ago, you were doing Zoom calls with these sight unseen buyers. How important do you think it is? And if you were talking to agents today, the Berkshire Hathaway said, hey, I want you to talk to this group of agents. How important is doing something face-to-face, especially initially, whether you're doing your buyer consult? Because a lot of people, we can get on the phone. That's real easy. But to take the time to set up a Zoom call and actually see each other, how important is that, you think, in the...
So I actually don't do a phone call. I won't do that. And I will not meet someone at a house without having a consult. So I need to be able, especially with this NAR settlement, so I'm glad that I already do this, but I want to articulate my value, my process, my plan, my communication style, and set expectations from the beginning. I also want to get to know my client and understand their priorities, their long-term goals, short-term goals. That way we can make this the best process possible and get them the best end result. I seriously have never just gone and met someone at a house. I don't think it's safe, and I don't think it's smart for business.
Well, I was kind of digging into you have some credibility because a lot of the referral. So you have, hey, Julianne's great. Okay, so you got that endorsement. But to make that customer into that customer who is referring you after the show is over, building the relationship because you took the time to either meet them face to face at the office or coffee shop or doing the Zoom call.
I'm a little confused on the question that you're asking.
So I think a lot of agents, and not all just agents, in sales in general, as you're doing the video, you're building we're building that psychological relationship because we're seeing the human across from us. And I think the public has this perception, is why I think a lot of real estate agents have this perception, that you're just focused on that 30, 45-day transaction.
Right.
But really, that 30, 45 days is you marketing for the referral that continues the ball rolling.
Yes.
So when you analyze what you're doing in the 30, 45 days and say, okay, yeah, I got a transaction, I got a contract, understood, but I want to make that contract into 3 contracts over the next 3 years.
Yes.
And because they're going to refer you to somebody or do business with you again.
Right.
The importance of doing that initial face-to-face to not only gain credibility, but also to start the relationship people, because, some people, they need to meet, they need to have so many interactions, before they, gain that trust, credibility.
I actually have a great example for why it is so important. So I had a Zoom consult, buyer consult. They were sent to me from an agent in Annapolis, and we met, and as soon as we got off the consult, so our 30, 45-minute buyer consult, we haven't seen houses. I haven't even sent them houses yet. Mm-hmm. That was our initial buyer consult. I get a text that says, hey, my friend just did a buyer consult. I'm actually looking to buy a house in Jacksonville too. Can I schedule one?
Wow. Already referred you somebody like 30 minutes after.
And it just shows that you're adding value. When I do that, I ask them, I'm going to let you lead the way here too. Ask me the questions. Let's get to know each other, because it is really important to get to know your clients. Do you have kids? Do you have dogs, cats? All of these little things. Do you like coffee or drinks or?
Well, if you're talking to someone on the phone, or, I've done complete loans through Facebook direct messenger.
Yeah.
Okay. There's some people who want to communicate that way.
Right.
But sometimes on the phone you can be short because you're getting distracted. Maybe you're at home and the kids are over there and you're looking over. But when you actually go face to face where someone's seeing you, if you get distracted because the kid ran behind you, they see that.
It's relatable then too. It's not relatable on the phone. It's annoying on the phone. Just to be transparent, when you're on the phone and someone gets interrupted and is distracted, you're just sitting there like, what is going on? Why aren't they talking to me?
Is it me?
Whereas on Zoom, it's kind of funny when my 3-year-old, runs across screaming something and singing trolls. It's like, oh, she also has kids. She's normal.
That's exactly the point I'm trying is to take the time. My recommendation to agents that are listening: take the time to do the Zoom call. To consider it marketing. You're doing the buyer consult. You got to do that. Make it. To me, I think everything has multiple purposes, and that initial call, as you're explaining, you're building that relationship, and they're looking at you, going, "Oh, Julianne's cool. Holy cow, my friend's being transferred too. Let me tell her." You got because you had that. You could see your smile. If there's a distraction, it's not rude. They're not going, "Oh, is she just not paying attention to me?" They know, they kind
Right.
of see what's going on as if you're in the room with them.
So actually, I was taught in my initial training with Berkshire Hathaway to classify things as income producing activities or not. And I classify my buyer consults, my face-to-face ones, whether they're Zoom or coffee, whatever, as one of my top income producing activities. If I can get someone to sit down and do a consult with me, they're using me as a realtor. They're not using somebody else.
100%.
And they will go talk about me.
Yeah. No, I think if we took a national poll to people who are doing it religiously like you are, either a face-to-face or Zoom, their retention on that person is probably in the 90-some percentiles.
Yes.
Yeah. Because, that 100%. Maybe you threw me off there because I was going to, no, that's just a question that came to my mind while you were saying that there, but maybe we'll come back to me. All right. We'll just touch on a couple different things here to finish up. VA assumptions.
Yes.
Because you are dealing with a lot of VA buyers moving in and out.
Right.
Type of thing. And there's some situations where it's really easy, where they really don't have a lot of equity, and assuming the loan is easy because the buyer doesn't have to come up with a lot of money. But there's other situations where they've been in the house for 3 or 4 years and appreciation has happened, and what has been your experience? How many you think are out there, if someone's listening right now who would really love to assume a 3% VA loan, they need to contact you?
I definitely think that it's worth exploring. I think it also depends on what your goals are. If you are looking for that perfect family place right next to a school, things like that, an assumption may not be your top priority.
Right.
If it is, we can find you something. I think the most important thing to note is the first hiccup is going to be cash. Right, you need that cash difference, like you said, which can be an issue with how things have appreciated. It is not always a difference. I have a lot of buyers who come to me, they're single, they've done a deployment, and they've been saving their housing allowance, tax-free housing allowance, and they're ready to put that down somewhere. You're a great
Not all many veterans, they do have money. I don't assume they don't have money just because they can do a 100% loan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that it's definitely worth exploring. I tell a lot of my buyers who are first-time home buyers who have seen this assumption of 3% on the news, don't get so caught up in it. Like, I don't know if it would be a make or a break if you're buying, your primary residence. But I do think that it's out there, and there's a lot of sellers who don't know that they could market it that way too, and open the door for even more buyers.
I really wish, I'm not in that level from the lending side to create products, but I think the VA would really move. If it was a veteran sale, I would put that stipulation on it, but create some sort of second.
Yes.
That they would back. Maybe 10% down, 5% down, something like that.
Yes.
So it's not completely 100%, but to be able to assume that first mortgage is huge.
That would be incredible.
Well, it would save the American taxpayer because we've got to compensate them to live wherever they're going.
Right.
And if they got to take the higher interest rates right now, based on where they're going, we've got to adjust what their housing allowance is.
Right.
Yes, that's dream right there. I wish if I had control over that, because I don't think people realize how many are out there.
Right. They don't. And I do agree with what you said, that an important thing to note is that veteran to veteran, which you can speak more on this, but a lot of my sellers get nervous because they want to maintain their VA entitlement, which means that we need to sell to a VA loan
to another veteran.
But there are tons of VA loan users. We can find one. Yeah. So it goes both ways.
Yep. What would be 3 things that you would recommend? Again, Berkshire Hathaway says, Julianne, I want you to speak at the sales meeting this weekend or this Monday or whatever. And what are 3 things? I want you to talk about 3 things that every agent should be doing with the current housing market. We're seeing listings, in case someone's listening to this at a different time, we're June of 2024. Interest rates are, give or take 7%, a little higher, a little lower, depending on which day you're at. Listings are lasting a little longer. They're staying on the market because of the buyers. Now, we still have some demand here, but what are you doing right now to, in your marketing and that sort of thing? What should these agents be doing?
So one is to stay educated on the changing market. Know the trends. You need to be looking on MLS, looking on that hot sheet, especially if you're farming certain areas or focus on certain areas. I really don't because I work around the bases, but understanding the market, the trends, and the interest rates.
Be an expert in your area.
Right. Mm-hmm. Always be an expert. 2, stay top of mind. So you are the realtor. It's you. There are no other realtors here. I'm not focused on...
I like that attitude. I like that.
It doesn't matter what the other realtors are doing. I'm a realtor and everyone needs to know that.
Do business with you.
Right. Mm-hmm. So everyone can do their own thing, but stay top of mind. And then be consistent. So with both of those, be consistent, but with your whole business, be consistent. Be consistent on your content, whether it's sharing your family, sharing your struggles with the business, sharing your wins with the business. Be consistent. Be consistent on communicating with your clients. Have those check-ins, whether it's a year after closing or a week after consult. Be consistent with everything.
Especially because some of these buyers are lasting longer.
Yes.
They may get in and think they want to buy. Maybe the house they were looking at doesn't work out and like, we're going to wait.
Right.
You need to keep dripping on them.
Yeah, give them the time to process that didn't work out, but check in with them. How are they handling that house didn't work out? I'm here for you through it. I'm here to support you and take on that stress. Be consistent. I
really love that you are the agent.
Yes.
I mean, yes, there are a lot of other agents out there because you personally could not do all the sales in the air. But you have to have that attitude that if someone's going to buy or sell a home, they should be doing it with you because you're good at it.
Right.
And you're going to give them great service and so forth. That's a great tip right there. I don't think a lot of either they just assume that, but I know some people that actually don't actually implement that. Like, there's other agents in this area. I don't want to market in an area. No. They may not like that other person.
Right.
They may know that person too closely and don't want them to know their business. Me being a mortgage lender, I know I don't blame family for not. There's other family that only will do business with it, but there's other family members, they don't want me to know they're behind the scenes.
Right.
So I understand that. That's part of doing what we do because we do get intimate, so to speak, with everybody. Anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say thank you for having me. I feel like it's been great to go over these topics. Yeah. I always love talking about VA loans. I think it's really important that everyone be educated on them. I think we ought to put together, I don't know what I was dripping on before. I don't know if I completed my actual thought because I think video is so important. And, you're doing your videos, you're putting them on YouTube and so forth, that there's not enough agents doing it. And as you said, LinkedIn and YouTube are going to be two areas that you're going to bring up to another level. Every agent in town, I could pretty much include on that. 99.999% of them need to be doing the same thing, and maybe do some sort of training or panel or something explaining that and put you out there what you're doing because it's obviously paying dividends for you. I would love that. Appreciate you. Yeah. All right. Thank you.